If you've ever asked anybody local where to go fishing on Lake St. Clair, it's really likely that they'll say the mile roads. Mile roads are a good choice for a lot of reasons. One is it's relatively safe. It's mostly sand-weed combinations in the shallows, and it's got a slow sloping break, which makes it very safe if you're coming up on a boat. There's not a lot of surprises there in terms of safety. And the fishing is outstanding. You were talking about early season fishing is great, and going right down to the end of the season is awesome too. Fish positioning changes a lot. You can tell a lot of the fish positioning by the boat positioning. The mile roads are really that. They're miles and miles of shoreline. So what you'll have is boats lined up for miles right in the zone where the fish are. And you could pull right up in that zone and start catching fish. If you want to get a little bit more sophisticated, then we're going to talk a little bit with Bob Mann and Dan Kimmel about some of the details about fishing the mile roads.
Fishing the mile roads on the U.S. side is an absolute blast, but I believe there's 3 seasons out there. Your start of the season where you're catching, the fish are preparing to spawn or just finishing up. You know, there's just so many in numbers, and it's such a blast. It's sightseeing, you're looking for the spots. It is an absolute riot. And then there's the part of the season where they've just finished. So they're kind of resting for a week or two, and then they go on a feed bag, and then that's, oh my God, to hit those fish out there is an absolute more blast because they want to eat. They're hungry. And then I find during the summer for myself that it really dies off for me. And then come the fall time, it's like repeating the pattern as he did in the beginning of the year, where all the fish are slowly moving back in from the deep, and they're coming in the shallow, and they're really feeding up again for the winter. And then they just, once again, they just want to eat, and it doesn't matter what you throw to them out there.
Well, I like the mile roads because it's kind of like a self-enclosed habitat. I mean, I always say, when I do seminars, I say, if you can find a spot where you find the habitat, spawning area, and food all in one area, you know, a half a mile or 2 mile area, you're going to have a lot of fish that live there. And that's the mile roads. I mean, you're describing the mile roads. You got everything they need along that. It's a big, giant, multi-mile flat, and it depends on who you are, how far you think that goes. It's got everything they need, so obviously you look at it and go, a lot of fish are going to live there. And that's what attracts me to it, and why I tell a lot of people that. And of course they think everybody tells them go fish the mile roads. Well, that's obvious, you know. Well, it is actually it's better early in the year for most people. Why? Because more fish are shallow and easier to catch, easier to see. They're spawning, they're visible if you got clear water. But you got to realize if that many fish are there shallow, that means they're still there somewhere nearby later and later and later. And what we found out in the last few years in particular, guys have gotten a lot better at it, is a lot of those fish just drop way out offshore straight out, or maybe slightly north as some of them move towards the channel. But again, I don't think all of them go into the channel. I think that's why there's so many fish out there in those deep areas right into September, October. I think they follow each other out there, and some of them just say, hey, there's plenty of food here, I'm going to stay here. And some of them, you know, I'm going to go up the river and see what's happening there. I mean, obviously, they don't think that way, but that's kind of how I picture it. So I think if you stay on them that way, you can catch big fish most of the year on the mile roads. Just a lot of people aren't good at staying on that. You see them, they go here to 6 to 8 foot in June. They go 6 to 8 foot in July. They go 6 to 8 foot in August. And it works certain days. It just doesn't work all the time.
How do I narrow down from the 9 miles to Metro Beach? Well, once again, I find a lot is how the season's going. At the beginning of the season, I'm going to be down by 9, 10, 11 mile. I just feel there's more fish being held up there. They're spawning. For whatever reason, that bay warms up a little bit. I believe the water coming out of St. Clair River cools off and stays more cool up by Metro Beach. So at the beginning of the year, I'm down by 9, 10 miles, and as it warms up, I start heading up to Metro Beach. Once you get up in that area and later on, especially just before the real season kicks in, I find the bass are holding up. But once again, depth to me really clicks in. Once you find out if they're in 11, 12, 12 and a half feet, 14 feet, which after 14 feet, then it really drops off to 16 feet. If you can find that spot where they're holding up in that one little area, and if you got a really good graph, you can find it, then I move up to Metro Beach later on. And that's where the big fish hold up before it gets too warm and they move out really deep.
I choose to go to the mile roads a lot more in the early part of the year or late part of the year, because there's a good crankbait bite, and I love crankbaits for smallmouth. I was doing crankbaits for smallmouth quite a ways ago when people were barely doing it. Now it's kind of the in thing all of a sudden. But mostly again in the fall, I do it all year, so any day. But in the summer, I rarely go there. It's just a personal choice. Those big flats where you have to look for them for so long and they can move so much. I know one area where there are a lot of big fish. It's just way out offshore. It's just an area that apparently they just congregate. It's just a congregation area. So when I can get there, I love it. It's a blast. And I know more people are finding those kind of fish. So again, if you like fishing that, I'd say go there all year. You could literally just base your entire tournament year on the mile roads. And some guys do it.